Hey everybody, I've got a really big thoughts on Thursday today. I am so excited because I have another single coming out tomorrow. This is the fourth single and it's going to be the last one before the full album is released. And it is just in time for Mother's Day because this song is called Mama. And I know that it sounds sweet, but it's not. Mama is a fight song. It is not a worship song. It is not typical for me at all, but it's a really important song. And it's one that I really felt strongly I needed to write. I had these experiences and some encounters that really frustrated me in regards to my children. And you know, trying to raise kids right now in this time is kind of insane. We can't let our guard down, not for 1 second. You know, I remember growing up, it was like Saturday morning cartoons was like the thing. Like, we'd wake up and we'd go out to the TV in the living room and turn on the Saturday morning cartoons. And there was never really a ton of concern about what we were watching. And I feel like nowadays, like I can't just let my kids watch anything. I have to check every single thing out. I mean, one thing I loved about leaving California was that we finally got away from so many billboards with obscene things on the billboards. Like, it's kind of crazy to be driving down a highway and there's mostly naked woman on a billboard, and my young boys are like, what is that? Why is, just, y'all know, like, it's a wild world right now trying to raise our children. And I had some experiences and some encounters that just really kind of sent me over the edge and made me very angry, but it was like a righteous anger inside of me. And one day I'm running errands, grocery shopping, things like that. I'm by myself in my truck, and I'm just talking to the Lord and processing my frustration at, I can't let my guard down. There is literally zero relaxing, which, it's fine. It is what it is. But it just feels like I'm always like nonstop fighting for my kids. If I'm not like in my prayer time praying for them and covering them in that, I'm constantly having to be on guard for anything trying to come in and disrupt what we have going here, And as I'm talking to the Lord about this, I felt like this song just dropped in my heart. And I grabbed my phone, and while I'm driving, I'm holding my phone and singing into it, this song. And when I got, a good chunk of it, I called up my songwriting mama friends, and we got a songwriting dad in there too, and asked them to help me finish this song. And we completed this song. And it's got some humor in it, but it's got a punch. And because it is a fight song, I wanted a song to give a voice to mamas, especially mamas who, are like me. Like, you're at home with babies, and you're not necessarily like out there totally having a voice in everything. And I wanted to kind of give us a voice and to say something. And the whole point of this song is, those are my babies, not yours. And I get to decide what's best for my babies. Right now, there is a war on families. There is a war on children. And if you aren't aware of that, I mean, you probably need to be talking to Jesus a little bit more, because it's real. And to me, it is just cheap 2 cents, anyone's opinion about my kids, because they're mine. Wyatt, Bear, and Maisie, they belong to me and Skylar. God entrusted them to us. We are the front line. We are the ones who decide and who teach morality, and we set the standards for everything in their life. We are the ones who are responsible for them, for their hearts. And I am so tired of living in a world where everyone has an opinion about how our kids should be raised. There were even statements made by people in our government about them being all our kids. No, I do not co-parent with the government. They're not all our kids. Wyatt, Bear, and Maisie, those are my kids. And I think that there's a lot of us mamas who feel that frustration and feel that attack. And it's easy to grow a little weary in it, like I said, because you can't ever relax. You can't ever let your guard down. We are constantly like this with our kids, you know? And I wanted a song that would maybe just bring a little zip back in your step, maybe encourage you, maybe energize you and get you, I don't know, pumped up about your kids and this fight that we are in. So anyways, Mama comes out tomorrow, and I know it might be a little bit strange having a non-worship song on the worship album, but this is who I am. I am a mama. This is my most sacred calling, way more than a worship leader. It is to my children. And I really believe that at the end of my life, it does not matter how many people I led in worship or led to Jesus if I failed my kids. If I failed my kids, I have just failed. They are my number one mission field. My number one calling is to raise them and to point them to Jesus. And that is the most sacred role, like I said. And I don't want to fail them. And like I said, I really do believe if I fail them, I have just failed. And it doesn't matter the other things that I have done in my life. I will say, this is kind of a fun story, but I was on this Christian show one time. It was James Robinson and his wife, Betty, I think is her name. And it's a show that's like down in Texas. I think maybe it might be everywhere. I'm not totally sure. But anyways, I had just written my book, Brave Surrender. And it had just released. And so I was on the show to do an interview and to talk about the book. And the way that they do it is they tape the show. They tape like 3 shows at once. So there were 2 other guests there along with me. And we were just, recording the back-to-back shows. But before all of that, we were all in a room having dinner with James and his wife. And he was asking the other guests, these older men, so what have you been doing? What have you been up to? And they were going on and on about all of their great exploits, let's say. This was their, 10th book, each of them. And they had just been with this person and that person. They were dropping all the names. They were talking about their, big shiny new church building, and that they just got to do this conference and that conference, and just going on and on, all their things. And to be totally honest, I was sitting there like eating on the other side of the table and just listening and just honestly feeling a little small. Like, well, I was right in the middle of homeschool with my kids. They were even younger at the time. And I hadn't been doing much or traveling much because I had been working so hard on the book and getting it out. But also I just needed to be home at that time taking care of my kids. And I had a really intense surgery for a health issue that I had. And I was still recovering from that. And that kept me home for quite a bit. And so I just felt like, gosh, please don't ask me, because I don't really have much of anything to say with these guys. And sure enough, James turns to me and says, and what about you? What have you been doing? And I'm a little spicy sometimes. And I just said, well, I have just been at home taking care of my babies. And that's what I do. I have 3 young kids. I homeschool them, and I haven't been doing much of anything except that. And this book is my very first book. And who knows if I'll even do another. And he scoots back from the table, puts down his fork, and he just sits there like this and he starts to cry. And then he says, and it just gets quiet, and he goes, what she's doing is far more important and greater than any of these things that have been said. And he told me about how when he was a lot younger and kind of the generation that he was brought up in, they were taught that nothing comes before God in the ministry. And obviously nothing comes before God. Like, God has to be first in our lives. But for them, that translated to the ministry that he's called you to or given you. And that meant that families were behind that. And a lot of families suffered because of that. A lot of children suffered because of that. And he said that, within his generation, with them being taught that, that was a huge regret that so many of them had, was that they essentially didn't have their priorities straight when it came to their family. And I share that to say it was just a really sweet reminder, and coming from someone with experience and looking back and going, you're onto something here. This is the right thing. This is the most important thing. This is the best thing that you could do, is raising your children. And, we can't be lazy parents. We can't expect the schools, the teachers, the doctors to be raising our kids for us. God entrusted those children to us. They are ours to raise. And, I have friends who are teachers. I feel bad for them sometimes. Some of the stories that they tell, when you have parents who aren't, like, let's be honest, like, aren't really doing their job of raising the kids, and they have extremely undisciplined children in their class, and, what can they do? So I get it. There's a lot of facets to all of this. There's a lot of thoughts and opinions and ideas, but the bottom line is God gave those children to you, mom and dad. They are yours to raise, and you are the one setting the standard in their lives. Anyway, I'm so excited. Mama, the fight song that is not a worship song, that is on a worship album. I'm 42, don't got to explain myself at this point. It's on there. And I hope you love it. I am so excited. Go check it out tomorrow. It will be on all the platforms.